Welcome to Simply Explained English. I am Lisa.
And I'm Eric. Do you want to improve your English easily? If so, you're in the right place.
So let's get started and make English easy. So Eric, what are the words today?
The first word today is ordinary. Then we will continue with consequently and to blame. Then to walk out on. And the final one is in the heat of the moment.
Okay, let's start with the first word.
The first word is ordinary.
Ordinary.
Ordinary is an adjective, and it means something normal or not special. When something is ordinary, it's common, usual, or just like many other things. Here's an example sentence. The restaurant was nice, but the food was just ordinary. It means that the food wasn't special or amazing. It was normal, like what you would find in many other restaurants.
That's a good example. Here's another one. She wore an ordinary dress to the party, nothing too fancy. It means that the dress was simple and normal, not very fancy or different from what most people wear.
Good example. So you can use it for almost anything, people, places, clothes, or even events. It's a very flexible word. Now, let's practice using ordinary in a short dialogue. Are you ready, Lisa?
I'm ready. Let's go.
How was your weekend?
It was pretty ordinary. I just stayed home and watched TV.
That sounds relaxing. Sometimes an ordinary weekend is exactly what you need.
Yeah, nothing special. But it was nice.
In this dialogue, Emma describes her weekend as ordinary because she didn't do anything special. She just stayed home and relaxed.
Ordinary is a great word to use when you want to say something is normal or usual, and it's often used in casual conversations like this. Eric, do you think ordinary is a formal or informal word?
I'd say it's pretty neutral. You can use ordinary in both formal and informal situations. In everyday conversations, people might say, "It was just an ordinary day." But in formal writing or speeches, you can also use it, like, "He lived an ordinary life."
I agree. It's a very common word that fits in many different situations. Do you think ordinary is a positive or negative word?
It really depends on the situation. Sometimes ordinary can be neutral or even positive, like in our dialogue where Emma had a nice, relaxing weekend. But other times, ordinary might be negative, like when people want something special or different.
I think that's right. Sometimes ordinary is perfectly fine, but other times people want something more exciting or unique. So, listeners, if you want to describe something normal or usual, ordinary is the word to use. Well, I think that's it for today's word, ordinary. Okay, shall we move on to the next word, Eric?
Yes, let's do it. The next word is consequently.
Consequently.
Consequently is an adverb. It's used to show that something happened as a result of something else. It's similar to the phrase as a result or so. When you use consequently, you are explaining that one thing caused another thing to happen.
Let's give some examples so that our listeners understand better. Could you start, Eric?
Sure, Lisa. Here's the first example sentence. He didn't study for the exam. Consequently, he failed. This means that because he didn't study, he failed the exam. Consequently shows the connection between not studying and failing.
Great example, Eric. Here's mine. It rained all morning. Consequently, the game was canceled. It means that because it rained all morning, the game couldn't happen, so it was canceled. The cancellation was a result of the rain.
Great. And here's a quick grammar tip. Consequently usually comes at the beginning of the second part of the sentence. It helps connect two ideas and explain the cause and effect. For example, the road was icy. Consequently, there were many accidents.
That's a good point, Eric. Now let's practice using consequently in a short conversation. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
We didn't get the materials on time. Consequently, we had to delay the project.
Yes, and consequently, we missed the deadline. We really need to be more organized next time.
In this conversation, John uses consequently to explain why they had to delay the project. It was because they didn't get the materials on time.
Right. Consequently is a great word to show cause and effect in situations like this. Eric, do you think consequently is more formal or informal?
I'd say it's definitely more formal. You might use it in essays, reports, or professional emails. In casual conversations, most people would probably just say so or because of that. For example, I woke up late, so I missed my meeting.
I agree. It's very common in written English, like in academic writing or official documents. Do you think it's a difficult word for learners?
It can be tricky at first, but once you understand that, it's just another way to say because of that or so.
That's a good way to put it. So, listeners, when you want to explain that something happened as a result of something else, and you want to sound a bit more formal, remember to use consequently. It's a great word for more professional or serious situations.
Exactly, and that wraps up our explanation of today's word, consequently.
Okay, let's move on to our next word. Eric, what's the next word?
The next word is to blame.
To blame.
To blame means to say or think that someone or something is responsible for a problem or bad situation.
That's right. We use it when we point out who or what caused something negative to happen.
Exactly. Let me give our first example sentence. The coach blamed the team's loss on poor training.
It means that, the coach said, the team lost because they didn't train well enough.
Good explanation. Now it's your turn, Lisa. Can you give us another example?
Sure. Here's another example. Don't blame me for the traffic. I didn't cause it.
It means that the person is saying they are not responsible for the traffic problem and others shouldn't say it's their fault.
Now, let's talk about how to use this word. Blame is a verb, and we often use it with for or on. For example, he blamed her for the mistake, or she blamed the accident on bad weather or on him.
Good point. Now, let's hear a short dialogue using the word blame.
The presentation didn't go as planned. What happened?
I don't know. Some people blame the new software, but I think we just needed more practice.
Yeah, I agree. I guess there's no one person to blame.
That was a good example. The word to blame was used a couple of times to show that people were trying to figure out who was responsible for the problem.
Exactly. It's a really useful phrase when something goes wrong. Lisa, do you think to blame is common in everyday conversation?
Oh, definitely. People use it all the time when they want to talk about responsibility.
What about being more formal or informal?
I'd say it's neutral. It works in both formal and informal situations. You might use it in everyday conversation like, don't blame me for this, or in more formal situations like at work or school when discussing problems.
I think so too. It's one of those words that you hear in both casual and serious conversations. People like to use it when they need to explain why something bad happened.
That's true. Well, I hope everyone understands to blame better now. It's a word you'll hear often.
Yep, let's move on to the next word. The next word is to walk out on.
To walk out on.
To walk out on is a phrasal verb. It means to leave someone or something suddenly, usually because you're angry or unhappy.
We use it when when someone abandons a person, job, or situation in a sudden way.
Exactly. Let me give an example sentence. He walked out on his job after an argument with his boss.
It means that the person suddenly left his job because he had a fight with his boss.
Good explanation. Now it's your turn, Lisa. Can you give us another example?
Sure. Here's another example. She walked out on her husband after 10 years of marriage. It means that the woman suddenly left her husband and ended their marriage after 10 years.
That's right. Now let's talk about how to use this phrase. Walk out on is always followed by a person or thing that is being left, like on someone or on something.
Now, let's hear a short dialogue using the phrase walk out on.
Did you hear about Tom?
No, what happened?
He walked out on the team right before the big game.
Really? Why would he do that?
I'm not sure, but I knew he had also walked out on his wife a few weeks ago.
I see. He must be going through hard times.
That was a useful example. It shows how walk out on can express disappointment or surprise at someone's actions.
Yes, and it also shows that it's often used to describe unexpected or dramatic situations.
Absolutely. So, Eric, do you think walk out on is a common phrase in English?
It's fairly common, especially in conversations about relationships or work situations.
That's true. Is it more formal or informal?
I would say it's more informal. We use it a lot in everyday speech, but probably not in formal writing. It's a colorful way to describe leaving a situation. It's more expressive than just saying leave or quit.
Exactly. Well, I think we've covered walk out on pretty well. Shall we move on to our next word?
Yes, let's do that. Remember, listeners, we hope you won't walk out on us before the end of the podcast.
Great reminder, Eric. Okay, what is the last word for today, Eric?
The last word today is in the heat of the moment.
In the heat of the moment.
In the heat of the moment is an idiom that means doing or saying something suddenly without thinking because you're feeling strong emotions, like anger, excitement, or stress.
Yes, it's used when someone acts quickly because they are upset, excited, or angry. It's like losing control for a short time. Now, let's give some example sentences. Eric, could you go ahead with the first one?
Sure, this is the first example sentence. I yelled at my friend in the heat of the moment, but I didn't mean to. It means that the person was angry or upset, and without thinking, they yelled at their friend. Later, they realized they didn't really want to yell, but it happened because of their strong emotions at that time.
Right. Here's another example. She quit her job in the heat of the moment, but now she regrets it. This means that she made a quick decision to leave her job because she was upset or stressed, but later she realized it wasn't the best choice. She acted without thinking, clearly.
Good example, Lisa. This idiom is informal. People often use this explanation when they regret or didn't plan something. It's not used in formal writing, but is common in everyday speech. Now, let's move on to a short dialogue to show how in the heat of the moment can be used in a conversation.
Did you hear about Sarah and Mike's fight last night?
No, what happened?
Well, in the heat of the moment, Sarah threw Mike's phone out the window.
Oh no, that's terrible.
She apologized and said she acted in the heat of the moment and feels really bad now.
I hope they can work things out.
That was a good example, Lisa. It shows how in the heat of the moment can explain sudden emotional actions.
Yes, and it also shows that people often regret things they do in the heat of the moment. So, Eric, do you think in the heat of the moment is a common phrase in English?
Absolutely. You'll hear it very often when someone explains why they acted a certain way in emotional situations. It's informal, so it's great for casual conversations, but not something you would write in a formal letter or report.
I agree. It's a very useful phrase because we all sometimes act quickly when we feel strong emotions.
Exactly. So remember, when you do something without thinking because of strong emotions, you can say it happened in the heat of the moment.
Okay, that's it for today's episode of Simply Explained English. We hope you found the words today helpful.
Thanks for listening. Keep studying your English and try not to make decisions in the heat of the moment.
See you next time.
Bye for now.